Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to discuss student loans. Big, scary topic. Money in general can be a very scary topic, and over time, I've made it less scary for myself, so I'm hoping in this video I can make it a little bit less scary to someone else, or just make them feel more empowered. So let's just backtrack. So college is expensive, and whether or not your parent is helping you pay for school, you or your parent will most likely have to get student loans. There are parent loans to pay for school. There's also student loans to pay for school. And more often than not, if you're the student, you're going to have to get your parent or someone you know to co-sign on your loan. So not everyone is born into money or has people saving for money. So I ended up having to get student loans for all seven of my undergrad semesters. And I don't plan on going to grad school, and if I did plan on going to grad school, I would wait until an employer paid for it, or I would have money set aside in funds. But my parents both have gone to grad school and are highly educated, and my mom is currently in grad school again. They're paying out of pocket for it. It wouldn't make sense for them to get a loan even if they had money. I think if you have the money, you should spend it on that. But in my case, my parents wanted us to, because they had to pay for their education, so they wanted to instill that in us. And we didn't really grow up with the means to have those savings for that very reason. And my parents, their priority was buying a house, which is very understandable. I think that should have been the priority. So they weren't able to actually do that until we were in college to actually afford the house and buy the house. And here we are sitting in it right now. Anyway, so it's a little background of why I even have student loans and why most people have student loans. Now, once you graduate, if you're in America and you have student loans, you most likely have federal loans. Those are different than private, very, very different. And they most likely are unsubsidized and subsidized. I worked in the financial aid office for my school, and I still couldn't tell you the difference between them. One doesn't grow interest while you're in school, and one does. That's basically the difference to me. Couldn't tell you if that was the unsubsidized or the subsidized, so really helped out you there, but the internet can help you. But I don't want to focus on the federal loans, because the federal loans, you actually go through a process where they kind of tell you what your minimum payment is and show you, and you have to do loan entrance counseling and loan exit counseling. Excuse me. But private loans are different. You just sign up for them, they give you the money, and you move on. So when you get out of school, you have a deferment period for both. And while you're in school, that's also a part of your deferment period. But after school, typically, depending on your loan provider for federal and private, all federal loans, I believe, are 6 months. But depending on your private loan provider, it could be anywhere from 3 to 6. Luckily, I had a situation in college where I had to drop out of a class that I had a scholarship. It was a summer class, and they were hounding my parents, my mom, because my mom had co-signed on my loans at that point. And my parents were trying to buy this house, so that was a really fun experience. So we thought that because of that, I would either have less of a deferment period or no deferment period. But thankfully, I don't know if we called them or asked, but it reset. The deferment period reset. And so I have until basically mid-June to start paying them off. And that's when they're due. Mid-June is when they're due. So if I would incur a late fee if I did not hit that. Anyway, so with loans, it can be kind of scary to be like, oh my gosh, I have to pay this off. And like when you go on the internet, some places you hear like debt is good or debt is bad. Regardless of all that, I just want to encourage you, you're in your own space. You're in your own flow. Like your journey to becoming debt free or whatever is different than other people. Like even mine. So for example, I had this idea that I was going to be debt free by, I think it was, I once said a year, and my dad laughed at me and said, you'd have to make $100,000. And obviously that's very unrealistic. So I think it's a really good idea to give yourself the reality. Just give yourself a reality check. So it is probably going to be easier for you if you just have federal loans and you don't have private loans, or you have just private loans and you don't have federal loans and it's like half my amount. It'll be definitely easier for you. But if you're like me and have 90,000 is just the general idea, I'm including probably the percent of interest that I'm thinking of for the next couple of weeks to months until my deferment period is over. So it might be 90,000 by the time the deferment period is over. So I'm trying to be very realistic. What you need to do is when you're getting out of school, you start setting up your accounts for paying off your loans. And specifically for private loans, go into that account. If you have multiple cosigners, take a spreadsheet, separate them. This is what I did. This is how I'm making it easy for myself. I'm not going to give you any specific amounts, just so you know, because money is very personal and I really don't want to put that out on the internet right now. So like separate them. If you have 2 cosigners, if you have 1, just put them all under 1. Put the loan sequence number, the principal amount, the interest rate, and just the accrued interest. Typically all that will be in the actual thing. My dad also alerted me yesterday, because I didn't realize this. All that information also should be, well, at least the principal amount and the interest rate should be on your loan agreement. Make sure to save all of your loan agreements so you know what's going on. And typically they should only be sending you your loan information over email, or, well, typically like that's just for like verification, or like letting you know if deadlines are coming up, or like you've been accepted, or like that's been accepted. But any other loan information should come via mail. So if you get a text, don't trust it. And if you get an email from something that's not your loan provider, like make sure it's actually your loan provider. You don't want to be getting into any scams. But yeah, so I separated my mom and my dad, because my mom, she didn't work for a period of time and she's in grad school, so we kind of had to switch over. My original plan was to be all under my mom, but obviously that's not what happened. But it's okay. And so then you calculate the principal amount, that percentage, and then your current total, which is just like principal amount plus interest rate, the amount of accrued interest. And so obviously your total should be different than your principal amount. And then to calculate to do it in like a monthly budget, like to figure out how much you have to pay in a monthly budget, this is what I did. There's probably many easier amounts. You honestly could just, like do how much interest you would get per year, then divide it by 12. No, this is what I decided to do. Percent per month. So I took the interest rate and I divided it by 12. That's how I did it. You can do it differently. And then my minimum monthly payment, I did the total of a specific loan times the amount of interest per month. I'm probably gonna have to recalculate this by the time I actually start paying, because there will most likely still be a new amount of interest. I don't know how many how often it gets posted to the account. I'll have to figure that out as time goes on, but I did that, and I figured out that it was a certain amount of money per month, and that's just paying interest. I would recommend, what I'm trying to do to be realistic is do the minimum payment time, like interest times 2. Because if you're just paying your interest every month, you're only going to be paying interest. You're not going to actually take out any of your loan. You're just going to pay the interest. Now, if that's all you can afford, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Put any extra money that you can actually earn per month, like if you can afford it. You just need to find a way to actually pay them off at that point. Like you don't want to be owing money to someone all the time. So you just have to cut back on other parts of your budget. But there are like multiple ways of paying off debt. There's 2 big ones, and that's the debt snowball and the avalanche method. The snowball is you take the lowest per annual percentage rate and you attack that loan first. I plan on doing that. The avalanche is essentially the opposite. So you're going to end up paying less interest with this one, and you're going to be paying off you have to, regardless, before I dive deeper into this, regardless, you need to pay all of your loans every month. Like you need to pay them off all the time. You need to be making payments on all of them. Or else you could accrue late fees, I'm pretty sure. That's what I've been told. That could be wrong, but from what I have, my brother has gone through this process before, and my parents are strong on his experience and their own experience because they're paying off a mortgage. Anyway, so you have to always pay them off every month. So back to the avalanche method is where you take the highest interest rate and then you attack that one first. So you end up paying less in interest. The other one you end up paying more. And I am going to try to have more than one stream of income, but for the first part, it might just be one. So we'll see how much I end up making per month. But I have calculated, I added all of these amounts. I also added the lowest payment for my private loans. No, I already did that. So basically what I did is I took the minimum payment and I multiplied it by 2, and that is my minimum payment that I should be making every single month for all of them. And by minimum payment, it's going to be minimum payments because you have to pay on each loan. I haven't figured that out yet, guys. I'll do that when I get there. I get a stream of income at this point. But yeah, so then any other extra money I'm going to plan on putting towards one loan specifically per month. Just at this point, try to make your payments on time and try to pay off as much as you can. I think going into this, I am trying not to compare myself to other people, and like even what my parents want. My mom and dad like obviously want me to get out of debt. I want to get out of debt, but their ideas are different than mine. Like typically what they tell you, my parents and I follow Dave Ramsey a lot, and I agree mostly with what he says. My thing is, I think it's just as important to save during your time of getting out of debt as it is like any other time. And he does talk about getting like an emergency fund, and I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about investing and just in general, because if you just keep those on pause until you're out of debt, you could waste so much potential in the market over time. And I'm not saying like put the same amount that you put towards your loans, because even $50 compounding interest is great. And you could say the same thing for the loans. Like if you don't put that money towards the loans, it's compounding. I understand that. But there's not a good way to get out of debt fast without making a ton of money, and that's just so unrealistic. Like, you still need to be able to move forward. You still need to like be able to move out, pay bills on your own. And if you expect someone to get out of debt living under your roof, like, I understand that. What I don't understand is if I don't practice putting my money towards my debt in other areas as well, by the time I move out, I'm not going to be really set up for success, if that makes sense, because I would just be focusing on getting out of debt, and I wouldn't probably stay and wait to get out of debt before moving out, which is not the goal. The goal was to move out when I could. And if that happens to be when I'm paying off debt, great. If it's after, so sad. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, I hope that you have a wonderful, as much of a wonderful stressless experience paying off loans. There's stress in everything. That's the reality of life. But I think it can be a less stressful process if you make it a less stressful process. I feel like sometimes it's very easy to rely on like your parents and friends and family members to help you understand, but you really need to do the work for yourself to understand, because at the end of the day, your finances are on you, and they're not on anyone else, and you just need to learn from past mistakes, whether they were yours or someone else's, and really move forward and try to strive for a better financial future. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.